welcome to Things Are Getting Strange, Next Files Rewatch podcast. I'm Nick.
And I'm Kim.
And it's been a while because I was stupid.
You were stupid. Would you like to elaborate, Nick?
I fell down the stairs at 1 a.m.
Yep.
And then went to A&E for 3 hours, which was not great. On a bank holiday Monday.
Yep, because you hit your head.
Yep. And bled everywhere. I'm much better now. Then we were both feeling really awful last week, which is why we skipped that week.
I think we possibly caught a cold while at A&E.
Do you have any news for us?
No, I don't think I've got anything, I'm afraid.
Okay, I have one thing.
Oh, go on.
Okay, so Gillian Anderson, Dana Scully, has basically released a book called Want, which is about women's sexual fantasies.
Oh yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah, so it's actually come out now and been published and reasonably well received. It's like the new version of My Secret Garden by Nancy Friday.
Okay.
Apparently she's got one of the fantasies in there is hers. She didn't tell which one. But yes, so that's what she's been up to.
Interesting.
But anyway, if we've got no other news, I mean, we've got Perihelion kicking around, which we haven't looked at yet.
Yeah, it's because I've been rereading all the old ones for our Patreon.
Yes.
So I'm currently on Ruins for that, but I'll get to Perihelion eventually, just so I can let you know what I thought.
Yep, and otherwise, Reboot is in the ether.
Haven't heard anything about that for ages.
No, I mean, it's possibly going to go the way of Albuquerque at this rate.
There's also going to be another File Fest next year, but I don't think they've announced the dates for it yet. I'm keeping an eye on that for you.
Would you like a gift? It is a flesh-eating monster.
Tempting.
Really? So, The Gift. Directed by Kim Manners, written by Frank Spotnitz, and broadcast on the 4th of February 2001. Guest stars, there's Carolyn Lagerfeld, who played, of all things, Rustic Woman.
Rustic Woman.
That's her credit.
We weren't going to give her a name?
Apparently not. She was in Minority Report. And Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Frasier and House.
Okay.
There's Michael McGrady, who's Sheriff Kurt Frey, who's in Hocus Pocus. That film that everyone our age seems to love, and it's kind of the whole, it wasn't good at the time, guys.
I think you've said something deeply controversial there.
I probably have.
It's never been one for me, I must admit.
It's fine, but it's kind of weird. And that's about it.
I believe the detective as well lended his likeness and voice to a character in L.A. Noire.
Okay.
Okay then, would you like to give us a synopsis of The Gift?
I shall. A man drives up to and enters a house which has an ominous symbol drawn in blood on the door. When he's inside, a humanoid creature approaches a woman, but the mysterious man shoots the creature 3 times. As he returns to his car, he's revealed to be Fox Mulder.
Da-da-da-da.
Doggett investigates a possible lead into Mulder's disappearance in Squamish, Pennsylvania. Apparently, in the spring of 2000, Mulder visited the town searching for something to cure his terminal brain disease, which he received via exposure to an alien artifact. Doggett is informed by the local sheriff that Mulder investigated a case involving Mary Hangamel. Mary was told by her sister about a Native American legend of a creature who lives in the woods. While interrogating the Hangamels, Doggett learns that Marie is suffering from terminal renal failure. As he is leaving, he notices plastered over gunshot holes in their wall. Later at Mulder's apartment, Doggett finds a gun he kept hidden under his sink. Meanwhile, in Squamish, a backhoe digs at a stone circle located in the town cemetery. Later that night, the townsfolk show up in a cabin in the woods, demanding to a rustic woman, living there, that it be sent out. A creature attempts to escape, but it is captured. Doggett and Skinner return to Squamish and ask the sheriff about the murder of an unidentified transient, who Doggett believes was killed by Mulder. Doggett and Skinner travel to the cemetery and discover that the grave dug up by the backhoe earlier is that of the transient. The two find the casket empty, but Doggett notices that the transient dug himself out of his own coffin. The sheriff arrives with the creature, revealed to be a soul eater, which subsists of human disease, at the Hangamel home, where the symbol in blood is on their door again. The hideous creature opens its jaws wide and bites Marie. Doggett suggests to Skinner that Mulder shot someone to protect her from the man who was supposed to be in that grave. Meanwhile, deeper underground, the creature vomits what appears to be the visceral remains of Marie into a person-shaped mould in the soil. Doggett goes off alone to see the woman who guarded the creature in the woods. The woman implies that Mulder, feeling sorry for the creature, was trying to euthanize it, not save Marie. Doggett hears a noise and finds a trapdoor leading into the tunnels. Underground, he finds Marie and takes her to the hospital. He reports to Skinner that her kidneys have healed spontaneously. Doggett returns to the woman, who watches over the creature after recoiling at its ugliness. The woman explains that it looks that way because it takes the sickness of others into itself while healing them in the process. Doggett decides to take the creature away from society, which only uses it. However, Doggett is killed after the sheriff and his men, who refuse to relinquish the Soul Eater or even regard it as more than a thing, arrive and shoot him in the back. Doggett is firmly buried, but later awakens in the tunnels. In a dark corner of the cavern, the woman weeps beside the dead Soul Eater. She reveals that by eating Doggett's death, it has finally been able to die. Back at headquarters, Doggett is struggling to write his report. When Skinner checks in on him, he encourages Doggett to not submit a report, as it would contradict Mulder's earlier report and damage his, Scully, and Doggett's own reputation. Doggett protests that Scully had no knowledge of the events, but Skinner reminds him it would take months to clear her name, and there's enough that the two of them know the truth about what happened.
Thank you.
It's a weird episode.
Yeah, it is a really strange one, and one that I think at the time received largely positive reviews from critics, but there were a few people who had some issues with it, let's say.
I think we've fallen headlong into the usual trap of the Native American magic system.
Yeah, that was one of the things that it was criticised by some groups, but also some groups justified it, particularly the use of the Native American medical circle.
Yes.
Which also, in this episode at least, draws a striking resemblance to the X-Files logo.
And indeed the Zodiac symbol.
Yeah, you can't kind of not see the Zodiac crosshair anymore, but I think that's coincidental.
I think it's coincidence, but yeah, you got to wonder how much it is, because how it's presented at the start of the episode, where it's painted on the door, that looks like a kind of Zodiac kind of threat, doesn't it? Before you find out what it's for.
But also that the medicine wheel you see it a lot in horror films. The most recent one I can think of is the New Pet Cemetery, where it's the shape that the burial ground takes.
Oh, yeah.
Because usually, it's made with kind of circles of stone cairns.
Yeah, it's a trope that the X-Files has got itself in trouble with before, and here it is again.
Yeah. I also have problems a bit with the Soul Eater, because I think Spotnitz said when he was writing this episode he was inspired by legends of the Soul Eater, but that thing is like the opposite of what a Soul Eater is in folklore.
Okay.
As the Soul Eater is a creature, I believe you get it in American folklore, but predominantly because it came over from Africa.
Okay.
It's, I think, kind of like Nigerian folklore and things like that. But the Soul Eater is a being that does exactly what it says on the label. It eats your soul. And in doing so, without your soul, your body will kind of succumb to a wasting illness and die.
Okay.
Because, this creature arose as an explanation for kind of long-term wasting diseases.
Yeah. That makes a lot more sense.
Which is like the polar opposite of what the Soul Eater is in this episode. And it seems weird to even call it a Soul Eater, because it's not eating souls.
No, it's eating a disease. Disease Eater would be a better name for it.
I think you could draw a better similarity between this thing and Leonard Betts.
Yeah, it's a very similar kind of thing. Well, I mean, one of the things it made me think of, which is kind of just stylistic, I think, was Genderbender. Because like the weird tunnels and the kind of reforming someone underground is reminiscent of that.
Yeah, I can see that.
I don't think it's got any connection at all. Because those are teleporting aliens, so we don't talk about anything anymore.
A lot of the criticisms have been long-running ones in the X-Files, and that's the retcon of Mulder's brain disease.
Yeah, well, the point I thought came up with straight away was, this is something that the first episode of this season set up, that Mulder's been going off to do mysterious things that we don't know anything about. And it's taken this long to actually put one in.
Apparently, some of it stemmed from the fact that Amafati Part 2 was largely criticised, not for Mulder's brain disorder, but because he got over it so quickly. Because he has major brain surgery, and, a week later he's fine. Which you would not be. This is debilitating and would take a long recuperation period.
Yeah. They haven't actually fixed that problem, though, have they?
No.
They've just said Mulder did some mysterious things, one of which was go to see the Soul Eater.
I think they're fixing the problem, though, through retcon by saying, actually, he wasn't fine.
Yeah.
He was dying this whole time. And another criticism I saw on this online is, if Mulder really was this sick, why wouldn't he tell Scully?
Yeah, I mean, that doesn't track at all.
With how far they've come in their relationship, and Scully being open with him about her own terminal illness.
Yeah.
Why would he not speak to her?
Exactly. And also, go to the medical doctor for, okay, what does science give me as an option?
But to also do the flip side of the coin is, I like the way this episode set itself up. Particularly the opening with Mulder bursting in on the couple who are waiting for the Soul Eater's arrival. It has a really decent build-up, and it's quite a long time before you get a grasp on what's going on. So it builds quite a nice little mystery at first.
Yes. I think it's just a shame that the solution isn't great.
I also like the kind of what the hell is going on goes all the way up to you seeing the Soul Eater at work. I keep wanting to call it a Sin Eater for some reason. But
Well,
yeah, it's Soul Eater. But it's that absolute graphic horror scene where it eats the woman. And down to the fact of she's terrified as well, because presumably she doesn't know if this is going to work either.
well, I would, be not convinced that being eaten alive is going to result in me being cured of all my illnesses.
Mm.
It's interesting that we're trying to paint Mulder as having the empathy with the Soul Eating, that's why he stops it. At the same time, it's like a lot of prequel retcon stuff where you can make this point of this person's really empathetic or this person cares about something. But the only reason they do that is because you can't have him cured at this point because that invalidates the whole future stuff.
Mm.
It's not really a characterful thing, it's kind of the whole you're boxed in by the narrative.
I also think it shows a kind of callous side to Mulder, because the comparison I want to draw is Miracle Man.
Okay.
Because Miracle Man has the true tragic character of the episode is the sheriff's wife.
Yeah.
Who is almost paralysed by her arthritis. She's in crippling daily pain. But because of her husband's actions, the faith healer is killed off, and you know at the end of the episode now she'll never get better.
Yeah.
The counterpart in this is you also have this woman at the start who has, she's on dialysis, she's got renal failure and is going to die. Mulder does not let the creature heal her. He runs in and guns it down before it can.
Yeah, he could have let it do its thing first and then shot it.
So at the same time, it's, yes, I know this creature lives a torturous existence with a group of people who don't acknowledge it as being a living being. They refer to it as it and that, and things like that. But at the same time, in gunning it down at that point, he's also sentenced this woman to death.
Yeah. I suppose one of the other complicating factors, and I think they didn't take into account at all, is while you have this whole thing of it being exploited, it's not being forced to do anything.
Well, it kind of is.
It kind of is, but you paint the symbol on the door and it'll go in there and happily eat someone.
Happily is a...
Okay, maybe that's the wrong term, but they're not... It's not like one of these things where you're forcing someone to sort of expend their life force to heal someone or something. It's just like basically you set it up and it will go off and do everything automatically.
But at the same time, from an ethical standpoint...
Oh, it is torturing itself, yeah.
You know that this thing is suffering. You know, it's healing people because it's taking the diseases into itself. It's in constant pain, but it can't die.
Yes.
And you're going, aha, I'll pick the symbol on another door. It can have renal failure as well.
Yeah. I mean, obviously that's one of the other parts where presumably it starts to fall down a bit is Doggett really the first person they've tried to do this with?
When we eventually kill the creature by having it eat death.
Yeah.
Which...
Someone's got to have tried this before.
I have a problem with characters coming back from the dead.
Yes. Doggett's out.
Because if you remove death as a threat, which technically we haven't removed death as a threat because our one and only Soul Eater is now dead.
Yes.
But at the same time, you know, once you brought a character back from the dead once, you can continue doing it. I think it's weak storytelling. If you're going to kill off a character, that character should die. People have noted that this season, the theme is rebirth. You know, the whole theme of the overrunning theme of the episode is death and rebirth.
Yeah.
Because we haven't even got to where the conspiracy takes this yet. Well, this is technically a conspiracy episode.
Yeah, but next week...
Is it only next week?
It's next week we're going to get the real wowie stuff.
But you're even going back to... Which was the one where Mulder actually had the brain surgery? Was that Amafati?
Oh, that Mafati, yeah.
Where you had Mulder kind of tied up cruciform with what looked like a crown of thorns on his head.
Yeah.
You were starting your Mulder as the Messiah kind of themes even back then.
Yeah.
I did kind of like Doggett's little journey through this episode, though I do say, and we've kept saying it this season, is why the hell is he still so sceptical?
Yeah, there's no way he could have gone through that this time and not...
Yeah, in fact, I think even Paul Vitaris pulled that apart and said, how is Doggett not a believer by now? But at the same time, this is quite a good voyage of discovery for him, and it really does push Doggett outside of his comfort zone.
Yes. But like the third point, though, is Scully didn't go through anything like this in the first half of season 1 of The X-Files. She wasn't killed and reborn from a Soul Eater underground.
I guess your argument there is Doggett doesn't witness that because he's the one who's killed and reborn. You think he might want to question how the multiple bullet wounds in his back went away.
And why he's underground, why the Soul Eater is now dying, where his clothes are. There's a lot of questions I think Doggett would have.
I kind of like the visceral way it does kind of rebuild people. Yeah, it kind of vomits them up and then they reform in a human-shaped mould. It's, again, kind of caddishish. It's like making a golem.
Yeah. It's lovely. It's nicely grisly. We possibly should touch on police corruption, like multiple instances in this one.
Oh my, yes.
So, but not just the sheriff, which is like the whole, Doggett, do you want to come back and arrest these jokers? Because they did good. I admittedly have a hard time proving this.
Mm.
At the same time, though, Assistant Director Skinner saying, yeah, Doggett, don't submit a report for the good of Scully's career. It's like, as in this textbook police corruption stuff.
It was kind of interesting to put Skinman in the kind of believer role in this episode, because we have seen that a bit more in this season of now Skinner does believe everything. He's taking on more of this role, and I did kind of like the partnership between him and Doggett, because, you know, the only Scully in this episode is archival footage.
Yeah, and you do wonder how much of it is purely because we don't have Gillian Anderson, so we've got to put Doggett with someone.
Apparently that was part of Gillian Anderson's contract this time, as she was concerned that she wasn't spending enough time with her daughter, Piper Maru.
Okay.
So she had it agreed that it was things like she would, you know, work for 3 weeks and then have 3 weeks off.
Okay.
So they made quite a few episodes that worked around having either no Scully or minimal Scully, just to factor this into her schedule.
Yeah, it's very telling on rewatch, isn't it?
Mm.
One of my complaints, and it's been a common one for a while, and it does feel like, again, people have lost control of character, is the Lone Gunman.
Oh yeah, they do get a little appearance in this one, don't they?
And they get to do folklore research, and that's still not your thing. That's not what you do.
Apparently that was filmed on the set of the Lone Gunman TV series as well.
Oh, that's why it's cursed, is it?
Yeah, and all framed by the director of that series and things like that.
Well, we'll get into it when we get to it, but the Lone Gunman TV series doesn't understand the Lone Gunman any more than Frank Spotness does anymore, apparently.
But yeah, I agree. I know this is your hill to die on with the Lone Gunman, but you're absolutely correct. They're not folklore experts. This is where you'd usually get someone like Chuck Birkin.
Yeah, and I don't understand why not, or just create a new character. I know, presumably it's to establish a tie-in so we can flip back and forth between the two series, although that series is not broadcast yet, but it's Lone Gunmen do government conspiracies. It's really straightforward. And now they're just... I know part of it's because you've lost Mulder and you need someone who knows folklore stuff inside and out anyway.
Mm.
But it's not their thing.
You could even have it as a referral of something clumsy, like having Scully or Skinner or someone saying, I think I remember an X-File about this, go and look up this case.
Yeah, there are other ways of doing this, and I just do object to the Lone Gunman being repurposed as just Giles from Buffy, I think is basically what they're turning into.
Yeah, kind of. A less sexy version of Giles.
Yes. Yeah, fair enough. But again, that's not what their whole thing was.
No.
Their whole mandate was they could do spy stuff, they could hack stuff.
It's nice to see more of them.
It is always nice to see more of them. It feels like it's that whole the devil's bargain, isn't it? You get them all on Gunmen, they get a crappy spin-off TV series, and their whole characterization is just shot.
But it had a great pilot.
We'll get to the pilot. We'll talk about the pilot, and yes, it did have a good pilot. The conclusion, on the other hand, and then the second conclusion, whoa!
Hush, Nick, hush.
Is there much else to say about the gift other than it's... I don't know what spot this is playing at, basically.
I think it's kind of an interesting conspiracy curio, just on the basis of it feels like it should be more important than it actually is.
Yes.
I mean, this is the most we've seen of Mulder in absolutely ages.
Yeah, he's been absent for... Because I remembered it being... Mulder's at the series and he was basically in the whole of Season 8, and it turns out, no, he's in the second half of Season 8 is when he crops up.
According to my research, he's in 11 episodes of this season.
Yeah, that's almost half of it.
But sometimes it's just a tiny little glimpse of him, like in the early episodes.
Yeah. But he's still in it more than you'd think for someone who said, I want out the X-Files.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
failed to escape. I mean, you can make one thing that this is a very heavy conspiracy episode because we can't forget that Toombs, of all things, had Cancer Man in it, and he was, like, kind of roped into that one.
Mm.
But ever since then, we've never really touched on how the Syndicate sees Mulder's day-to-day monster madness and their UFO stuff.
Yeah, true. I remembered really disliking this episode, and I liked it more than I remembered. It's a good, strong Doggett episode, to be fair. And I do like the whole setup of it. It's really creepy until you find out what's going on. For me, it goes downhill in its kind of last act.
Yeah, and I'd also venture that with a little bit of reframing, this could just be a Scully light episode of The X-Files anyway.
Mm.
I mean, as much as it is Doggett doesn't believe things, it's still not really... It's Doggett-centric, but it's not really a Doggett episode, is it?
No.
Because you could recast this to Mulder without changing a lot.
Yeah. It does give me small problems with Mulder's characterization, as I said before, as I don't like how callous he appears in this episode. No. You can argue that he's deeply empathic, but he's only really empathic towards the monster and ignores all collateral damage on the way.
Shall we get turned to stone instead? That was a really strange...
weak segue.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a weird episode title anyway. But we are, of course, talking about Medusa. Directed by Richard Compton, also written by Frank Spotnitz. He was on a roll, apparently. And first broadcast on the 11th of February 2001. So, guest stars. One of these is kind of hard to ignore, even at the time. Ken Jenkins played Deputy Chief Karras. He was in the remake of Psycho.
Was he really?
He was. Star Trek Next Generation. The Stand. Babylon 5. He's in Gravity Falls.
Is he?
Parduskerton. I'm not entirely sure who that is.
No, I can't think who that is.
That's him.
Fair enough.
And A Series of Unfortunate Events. The Netflix one.
Oh, okay.
But what we all know him for is Dr. Kelso in Scrubs. The villainous head of the hospital. And
he's not playing too much of a different character in this one.
No, he's possibly slightly less empathetic than Scrubs, but it's like a slim margin.
Yeah.
So there's Penny Johnson-Gerald, who played Dr. Hilary Lyle. She was in Star Trek Next Generation and Deep Space Nine as different characters.
Okay.
Also in Frasier. Vito Riginis was Lieutenant Blanco, who was in Jumpin' Jack Flash, the obscuro Whoopi Goldberg film.
Fair enough.
Which also has Lillian from American Kimmy Schmidt in it.
Oh, really?
Yep. And John Lovitz.
Okay.
He was also in Cliffhanger and Broken Arrow, Wishmaster 2, and Star Trek Next Generation. Judith Scott was Dr. Kai Bao, who was in Frasier, Dexter, and House. There's a lot of Frasier people again.
And House this week.
And House, yeah. And finally, Brent Sexton played Stephen Melnick, who was in AI, the Spielberg Kubrick one.
Mm-hmm.
Vanilla Sky, and Third Rock from the Sun.
All right.
So would you like to tell us about a Greek monster who can turn people to stone and is not some weird sexual metaphor?
I wouldn't, but I will tell you about jellyfish.
Yeah, okay.
Our episode this time takes place in Boston, and we open to an undercover cop who's waiting in the subway. A suspicious man appears and jumps the fare barrier, eventually getting on a train with the cop in close pursuit. The cop draws his gun, and it's clear that this is the man he's following, as the man approaches him from behind. Suddenly, the train comes to a complete halt, and we see flashes of light as it loses power. Later, when the train eventually gets back up and running, a group of commuters get onto the subway car. They find the cop, but not the man he was pursuing. The cop is very dead and has the flesh of half of his face and his left arm stripped to the bone. Scully and Doggett arrive at the subway operations centre to investigate. However, they don't receive a very warm welcome from both Deputy Chief Karras and Lieutenant Bianco, both of whom belong to the transit police. They are waiting for the FBI to get the job done as fast as possible because, in true Jaws fashion, they want the subway to be fully opened and operational for all of those rush hour crowds. Karras is even irritated that Scully wasted time autopsying the body, an autopsy that didn't reveal anything that could have killed the man. There were no biological or chemical agents on the body that they retrieved from the subway. Doggett and Scully are introduced to a strike force that is going to be sent into the subway to investigate. This group includes Stephen Melnick, who's a structural engineer, and Hilary Lyle, who is a CDC employee who specialises in pathogens. Added to them is going to be Doggett and Lieutenant Bianco, with Scully deciding she would be better off in the control centre, where she could use her eyes and ears via Doggett's camera to analyse the situation from afar. As the team proceed into the subway tunnels, Melnick gets a burn on his neck after some subway water drips on him, which suggests a chemical leak is there. However, when the CDC tests the nearby puddle, it shows there is nothing dangerous inside it. It's purely salt water. Melnick mentions that the tunnels do run along the harbour, and in some places they can get leaks. Eventually they find an abandoned section of the subway tunnel. From this point, out bursts a man, who's the man we recognise from the opening sequence, who knocks into Doggett. He is a suspected robber, however he's not in a good way. He quickly dies because, much like the other man, huge chunks of his flesh, including his ribcage, have been eaten away by something. This reveals to them that there could indeed be a contagion down there that they're unaware of. As Doggett looks around, he discovers 3 more bodies that also have the same kind of dissolving injuries, all wrapped in plastic and have clearly been dumped there for a while. It becomes clear that someone in the subway team is covering up whatever the problem is. Dr. Lyle spots an unknown person running away from them, and the team follows. However, as they approach the spot where the train lost power, Melnick suddenly starts crying out in pain. There are visible flashes of electricity eating away at the skin on his left arm, gnawing it down to the bone. Scully tells Doggett to pour water on it, which seems to stop the flashes. Lyle then takes the badly injured Melnick to the surface as Doggett continues onwards after the person she saw with Bianco. As Melnick arrives on the surface, it seems clear he's getting worse, but Lyle is absolutely healthy. Scully then notices that the 3 wrapped bodies from the subway are being taken away by non-CDC personnel in hazmat suits. Scully stops them from doing so and confronts Karras, who reveals he's the one who's organised this. Scully tells him she already organised for the CDC to collect the bodies and accuses him of attempting a cover-up. Although Karras tries to deny this and even threatens her, he eventually does allow her to send the bodies to the CDC. Back in the tunnels, and still following the stranger, Doggett notices that there is a green glow on Bianco. As such, he refuses to allow Bianco to leave when Bianco tries to return to the service. This causes Bianco to run from him, prompting Doggett to give chase. Scully communicates with Doggett and says that Karras has gone ahead with his plan, allowing the system to reopen, despite the fact there is obviously danger. Scully also analyses water samples found at the scene, along with Dr. Kai Bo, who is a marine biologist. Dr. Bo explains that the sample contained a unique microscopic sea creature, which is called a Medusa. These creatures didn't show up in any of the previous searches because they're predominantly made out of calcium and are bioluminescent, which explains the green glow on Bianco's skin. Bao, however, cannot explain the electrical reaction. Eventually, Doggett locates a wounded Bianco and finds that his condition has gotten a lot worse. Doggett then carries Bianco on his back and helps him continue through the tunnels. They eventually encounter the person who ran away from them, who is a little boy who seems unable to speak but has no sign of the green substance on him. Scully realises that it is sweat causing the electrical reaction, since it is conductive to calcium ions. The boy, being prepubescent, has not developed sweat glands yet, so therefore the Medusas do not affect him. Doggett follows the boy, who leads him to a major leak from the bay, which has the very predominant phosphorescent glow up the walls. Suddenly, an ongoing train approaches the group. Doggett uses Bianco's gun as electrical conductor from the third rail to the electrolytic water, killing all of the Medusas and preventing further exposures. Scully later comes to visit Doggett in the hospital. She informs him that both Bianco and Melnick are with plastic surgeons, and the boy has been given to social services. Doggett is absolutely fine and is cleared to leave. When Doggett asks about Karras and the horrible things he did, Scully reveals that no criminal charges will be pressed against him, since the electrical charge destroyed their proof that there were ever any Medusas in the tunnel.
Thank you. This feels like a season 1 episode.
Yeah, it's got kind of that feel of the likes of Darkness Falls.
Well, I think it's got a lot of Darkness Falls in there, but it's also the local authority can just override the FBI, and the FBI just kind of have to go, oh, okay, if you say so.
And the CDC.
And the CDC.
As we never really found out who his weird non-CDC hazmat guys are.
No, I guess they're just going to throw them in the ocean or something. But it's a thing of, like, I thought people went to get freaked out when the FBI are involved in something, and Deputy Chief of the local transit authority doesn't feel like he should be override a criminal investigation. Probably
answers to the mayor.
The mayor probably should be, in constant panic that the FBI are poking on the tunnels. I don't know, it feels weird. It's like the kind of thing you get in Jersey Devil where the police run rings around Mulder for that episode.
Yeah.
But we haven't done that for a while. The episode also suffers from one problem a lot of X-Files episodes have, is that the Sting doesn't make any sense with the later revelations.
Okay.
Well, it doesn't, because it's the sting is, the undercover cop is being approached by the robber,
Mm-hmm.
and then the train loses power for no good reason.
Mm-hmm.
And then we cut to outside the train and we see all the electrical flashes and the screaming.
Yeah.
And then it pulls up to the station and the guy's been half dissolved.
Yeah.
And then later we're approaching the place where the train lost power. There's no trace of a leak here. We're not sure how the stuff got into the train or what set it off.
Mm.
I know, it just they didn't seem to connect together properly. To me. And I also thought the child, he doesn't have well developed sweat glands, so that's why he's immune to it. Was a bit of I'm sure is this some kind of trivia that Mr. Spotnitz, and you were desperate to get into a script somehow?
But kids do still sweat.
Yeah, this is what I was going. It's like, oh, he didn't have fully developed sweat glands, but he can still sweat. And it's hot down there. You've established this. And the whole CDC thing, and maybe the local authorities can sweep that under the rug. Finding 3 bodies wrapped in plastic in a disused tunnel that people seem to want to keep sweep under a rug, that you would say, the FBI would all say, no, this is now a murder investigation. You're all being subpoenaed. The trains will be shut down for the next however long. And I couldn't help but think of The Dark Knight as well while watching this.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's the one where the Joker shuts down every train system in Gotham, except for the boats.
Yeah.
And they just do that. No one tries to use the train system when he's decided to shut it down.
The one it made me think of, and it's in part because it's in the subways, is Mimic.
Yeah. But Mimic didn't do any of this nonsense either, though, did it?
No.
And I don't like... The other thing that made me think of season 1 is that Doggett kills all the Medusa in one fell swoop.
Even though they're all up the walls and in...
Leaking in from the bay, yeah.
Yeah, but it's not just on the rails that it's leaking into, it's from that other kind of chamber to the side, too.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how he fries all of them without not also frying himself.
And indeed probably most of the electrical grid, because that's going to cause a lot of damage and things, because you're not meant to short things into water. That's how things get destroyed, isn't it?
Like Medusas.
Like Medusas. And just the boy Blase walking through the bioluminescent glow. It's weird. It's a weird episode.
Medusae as a actual genus are kind of fascinating.
Okay.
Because this is the genus that jellyfish belong to.
Ah.
And, they can range from massive, large, complicated things that are bigger than a person to things that you can't see with the naked eye. It is an absolutely fantastic, fascinating genus because jellyfish are amazing creatures. But I couldn't find anything that really seemed like this creature when I was researching it. I think your closest are things like marine hydras, which also carries a mythological name, interestingly.
Yeah.
But, single-celled predatory creatures.
It just felt like it feels a lot like they come up with the visual effect first. This whole electricity sort of eating away at your flesh, and then desperately try to justify it.
Interestingly, it was one of the most expensive X-Files episodes of all time to film, this one.
Was it the subway set?
Yep, that is entirely a set. They built what Robert Patrick said was one of the biggest sets he has ever seen, because they built the subway, essentially, to film it in. But also all the kind of corpse effects, the half-eaten away corpses.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Apparently the props department had to get quite creative, and some of this gore is made with things like fruit roll-ups and stuff like that, just to give that kind of rotting corpse sort of look to it.
Yeah, I mean, it is nicely grisly. I think it's kind of odd that we've Scully deliberately sits herself out of the situation and everything.
Presumably because of her pregnancy, which
I can
she
understand why.
still hasn't admitted, despite the fact she must be on about her 14th month of pregnancy by this point, I think.
But the government of corruption, I don't know, do they even specify, is it like Friday, or is it just normal rush hour when this stuff?
They just say it's rush hour.
Yeah, it's like, I could think it'd be easier to tell if you said it was like Friday night rush hour.
But I've been on London when they've had to shut a line before.
Oh, yeah.
In rush hour. And it's annoying and you feel like you're going to be crushed to death on the platform. But people don't get this annoyed. He's doing it like it'll be completely societal breakdown because people can't get their usual train home.
And no, because, we've both been in rush hour traffic in London on the subway. We've seen, I think even when we went to New York, we must have been around rush hour when we went off to the baseball game. And that was packed, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But people, I think it's one of the things where you want to say that, but trains are cancelled. It's a thing that does happen in the real world. And people have to adapt to that happening.
Well, it's how many times you go into London and they say, the Circle line is down today or something like that.
Yeah.
It's like, that's one of the main lines in London and you just find another way around it.
Yeah, and there are usually other ways of doing it. And I get maybe the infrastructure's not there, but it's the, I don't know, is it kind of like a weird precursor to COVID with the whole, what people see seems acceptable risk ways differently to other people?
When you get people saying, you're not the boss of me, I'll go on the electric microorganism train.
Yeah. So, during COVID was Deputy Chief Karras to say, no, keep the subway open, pack them all in, just get everyone into the carriages as close as you can, yes. Use up all the space, please.
He just made me think of an even less remorseful version of the mayor in Jaws, to be honest.
Well, yeah, I think that's the problem, because we watched Jaws just the other week. It's the whole... Yeah, he is just the mayor from Jaws.
But even the mayor in Jaws regrets what he's done eventually.
Yes.
And shuts everything.
I'd forgotten they do actually get him to sort of just admit some amount of culpability.
Yeah. Karras does not.
Karras does not.
Karras has no redeemable features.
Well, I think the other problem with the episode as well is that Karras vanishes, like, from the 2/3 mark as he stops appearing.
Yeah. You just get that thing at the end from Scully saying, well, we can't press charges against him because where's
Why
the proof?
Well, okay.
I think your proof is all of those corpses that were hidden in the subway.
The 3 plastic wrap bodies in a disused side tunnel. They everyone kept saying, oh no, don't go down there, it's a side tunnel, it's not used anymore. There are bodies down here.
Interestingly, there was way pre-COVID and everything. Possibly 20 years or so ago, the BBC did a documentary about how a viral outbreak could bring the modern world to a standstill.
Smallpox, wasn't it?
It was smallpox, yeah, was the virus they used. But that's the way they spread it, was via the subway.
Yeah.
Because it was a terrorist attack on a subway that meant that commuters were passing the infected material and getting more and more infected with every loop, which is also kind of how this episode works a bit, or how this episode could go horribly wrong when we don't know if this is a contagion down there and trains are still passing through the same spot.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of these ones I don't want to keep referring to other media, but it's like Ghostbusters 2. Because one of the things in Ghostbusters 2, they go and try and threaten the mayor with, or it might be Ghostbusters 1, I can't remember. It's like, do you want to be known as the mayor who let this happen to New York?
Yeah.
And it's why Scully doesn't say that to Karras. It's like that. I mean, I can't stop you ultimately, but if this mass infection is going to come down on you because you're the one who made this open despite all the warnings you were given. As much as you can say, I just wanted the good for the commuters, I don't think that stands up in court and these kind of tribunals when they sort of say,
when
you
they
were
say,
warned.
You knowingly sent them all to their deaths.
Yeah, that kind of thing. I mean, he's only lucky that Doggett did a stunt with a machine gun, which I'm not sure ever works. I'm sure machine guns are conductible, but...
Well, they made of metal.
But I will say that, Doggett, I understand what you're doing with your stunt at the end. However, do you not want to jump to the closest side of the tunnel and not jump across the tracks in front of the train and risk death?
That's not dramatic enough.
I know, but it's one of those, what are you doing, man?
You have to have your fear.com.com moment.
It's also, I didn't quite get why he's using it to short out the third rail into the puddle. The location of the train doesn't matter. Because you could put the machine gun down immediately.
Isn't that what it always warns you on signs in London Underground about how the third rail is always active?
Yeah. So unless that subway's done differently, but they make a big thing at the start of Scully saying the third rail's been shut down, you're okay to walk down it now.
Okay.
So I don't get that bit.
But they would have had to, not reignite, recharge the third rail if the train starts moving again, right?
Yeah.
That's how they work.
Yeah. So it's live, so I don't understand what the timing bit was for, other than, as you said, drama.
Yeah.
It's a frustrating episode, I feel.
I think it's kind of fun, to be fair. I like it. It's got this feel of a kind of old school sort of monster movie to it.
Well, yeah, I think like your invoking mimic is kind of the right kind of feel to it, and a bit Aliens as well.
Yeah,
because I think Aliens
anything where you're going down into dingy, wet tunnels with guns.
But someone else also watching through a video feed, and he's going to shout, "Oh, trying to intervene and everything," and can't because they're miles away and perfectly safe.
True.
So that's pretty good. We've talked a few times about how the X-Files left its episodes open-ended because it's the fear factor.
Yeah.
It's the way you kind of keep an episode feeling uncomfortable or something is the situation isn't actually resolved. It's resolved in terms of what the characters can do, but the threat is still there in some capacity.
Case in point, I go with something like Ringu, where we've potentially saved the protagonist, the threat is still there.
Yeah. Or even in the X-Files, like, the host, the Fluke Man, is still alive. Darkness falls, you don't know which other trees have the bugs in them.
Yeah.
And all the rest of it. And this one is, the Medusa are just dead.
They're presumably still in the ocean.
Yeah. But it's still... It's not the kind of thing where an older episode of the X-Files would just, showed you a new leak developing in a different subway tunnel or something.
Yeah, true.
It's... The threat is gone as far as we understand it. And that also feels weird.
In things I do like, I like the rationalization of why we don't discover the Medusa sooner. Because we're looking at this as a chemical compound and not as a microorganism.
Yeah.
I would think that the CDC would maybe look for microorganisms too, because they are the Centre for Disease Control.
Yeah, that felt weird to me.
So doing the chemical makeup and saying, yep, just calcium, no chemicals in here, maybe we should get it under a microscope and not find it's some new strain of necrotizing fasciitis or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, I think you made that point while we were watching it, is it's kind of odd in contrast to F. Emasculata, how they handle this one. And just how blasé Scully was in F. Emasculata at times.
Hey, at least they got the hazmat suits in this one.
She doesn't know.
Admittedly, not in the people they send down into the sewer either.
No, well, because they're in Aliens.
Yeah, true. If you're a cop, you don't have to wear a hazmat suit.
Or remember CDC or whatever the rest of them were.
An architect. One of them was an architect.
And Lieutenant Bianco, though, of the whole, can we vote on who's going to turn on Doggett like 10 minutes into this episode?
It's the guy who turned on Doggett within about 10 seconds of the episode.
Yeah. Who was antagonistic from the start. I think, ultimately it was an okay episode. It's just, Season 8 feels like it's rudderless.
I think it feels like it's treading water. As a lot of these episodes I haven't hated. And in fact, I like them more than I remember liking them, to be fair. But at the same time, they're not big hitters.
They're not good, per se, are they?
They're not memorable. They're not sticking with me. They're not making me feel uncomfortable.
No, and I think not making you feel uncomfortable is a good one to focus on, because I think that still comes back to that point of the fear factor's always been resolved. There's no lingering dread on any of it. It's like, you'd think something like Via Negativa, you could sort of set that up as an ongoing possible threat a lot easier. And that's just resolved completely.
Yeah.
This feels really odd.
We have lost the X-Files sting of the creepy thing that'll never be resolved in the style of the host.
Yeah. And I do wonder how much is factored into, as we alluded to, we're about to hit the next phase of the conspiracy arc. And how much is they sort of plotted out that we're going to do it midway through the season, with an eye to build up the end of the season. We just need to fill in the first half with something.
I seem to remember that comparatively with some of the others, this season is very conspiracy heavy. There aren't actually that many Monster of the Week episodes, and I think we've had most of them.
Have you got anything else for this one? Because I think it's both the episodes. It's like the season as a whole it's fine. It's extending the X-Files further on than what it was going to be, but at the same time, it's not remarkable stuff.
Yeah, even the critical reception for this one was kind of bloodless, so to think. It was... I remember one critic actually slammed the episode because they said the subway was far too clean. That it took them out of it because it was unrealistic, because, you expect subways to be kind of like dingy, full of trash, smelling like pee, that sort of thing, and this is the cleanest subway you've ever seen in your life. Which actually is a kind of valid point in there.
At the same time, it's like, is that the whole subway, or is it just a bit closer to the station? Because presumably when you're far enough in it, people don't get that far down the tunnels.
But the main criticism was the use of the Medusa, because this isn't memorable monster fare. It's not even a monster, really.
No.
Even in the terms of the kind of swarm you saw in Darkness Falls, it was a real tangible thing. This is essentially an invisible threat. It's more of a disease plot.
Yeah, and so that's the contrast to F. Emasculata is interesting again, because as much as that was also the same thing, that had a grisly effect that went with it with the infection part.
With the kind of bursting pustules.
Yeah. Well, this has the grisly bit of it triggered for whatever, when you've sweated enough.
And also in the sense of Darkness Falls, where you've got a similar kind of luminescent enemy, but this was a swarming insect, so you actually had clouds of this chasing people and things like that.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's... This one I remember mostly as being the one with Dr. Kelso in it.
And Dr. Kelso was a fantastic villain, to be fair, in the sense of he was a ridiculously over-the-top, irredeemable villain.
Who you wanted to strangle the entire time, yeah.
And you just wanted something bad to happen to him, and it didn't.
No, I mean, the other point we alluded to at the start is that train losing power at the start as part of the sting. We don't understand how that happens, or why that happens.
No, there's no explanation given.
It's just, it's a good sting, but it's not, they don't do anything with that sting.
I guess some sort of electrical disturbance caused by the little zappy Medusa, but at the same time I don't understand how this stopped the train.
No, because then you think you report it of saying, it got a power surge at this point in the tunnel, and you're like, oh, okay, that's interesting.
I know trains are kind of damp, but I'm not even sure how the Medusa got them inside the train.
Exactly, that's why I said at the start of, I don't understand how it connects to the rest of the episode.
Yeah.
Because it's a good start, and it's like very misleading with the undercover cop and this other guy who, my God, people, he's a fair jumper. You're going all this all out for a fair jumper.
Presumably he's not, he's some kind of thug.
He is, and there's real world anecdotes about how much New York spent on police overtime to stop queue jumpers versus just paying for people to take the train for free.
Yeah.
So next week we have Per Manum, which is not a memorable episode, and This Is Not Happening. We finally got an episode called This Is Not Happening.
I've been saying it for so long and you keep telling me to desist.
I know, well now you can say it.
Mm.
It's kind of a shame it's not a tribute to Jose Chung.
Yeah.
Which would be a lot more fun. But we are going headlong into the conspiracy because Per Manum is kind of a standalone-ish conspiracy thing. This Is Not Happening is our express route to the end of the season. In the meantime, if you'd like to get hold of us, our email address is thingsagainstrange42@gmail.com.
You can also find us on social media, and please do hook me up if you would like me to promote anything at the start of the show, including any fan events like FileFest and other similar things, fan projects you've got on the go, any neat bits of art. Do just let me know. We're on Twitter and Tumblr at GetStrange42, we're on Mastodon at GetStrange42@universidon.com, and also on Facebook, where you can find us by searching for Things Are Getting Strange and X-Files Rewatch Podcast. Additionally, and if you're not sick of my voice right now, I am also on Twitch under the name AdverseCamber42. My main stream is live Mondays and Wednesdays at 8pm GMT and Saturdays at 5pm GMT, where I'm currently playing Yakuza Kiwami 2 on PlayStation 4. I also do sometimes play some little things on the side, just as and when I get a couple of free hours. My side game is currently the 2024 edition of Alone in the Dark. If you follow the AdverseCamber42 Twitter or Blue Sky accounts, I will keep you up to date when I'm going to pop on in case you want to join me.
Our theme music is envisioned by Kevin MacLeod. You can find it on incompetech.com, licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0. Thank you all for listening, and until next time, please remember,
the truth is out there.